Let me pull up the agenda. I've got the recording started. And let me see. There's the agenda. Okay.
Okay, so welcome guys to week 3. And we have a full agenda tonight, as you know, we always do. So, Dr. Stedman and I told you on that first class meeting, if you will hang in there at least through week 3 and week 4, that we promise you that you will get down the routine and the pattern of when all these things are due. And I know that right now it still may be a little bit new to you. And so we'll hopefully clarify some of those things for you tonight. Let's be reminded of our class norms. And again, we ask that we don't start chatting in the chat box, that just jot some things down, and we will save all that to the end. And we just ask that you show us your face so we can learn you and get to know you, and that you are all in during our class tonight. Dr. Stedman?
Okay, and let's go back up here briefly. And but while we're talking about norms, let's go ahead and address it before we get into comments about task 1 and the peer reviews, Dr. Revis. If you remember, on Thursday evening, I interrupted and I said, I saw a lot of activity in the chat box, and I asked you to please stop and to pay attention because of all of that information that was being presented, because we know how valuable that time is, and what's being said is so important. And some of you stopped completely, but I'm going to just tell you, some of you went right back to it, and it was as if I had not asked you to stop at all. So think about this. If you were in the classroom and your students didn't listen to you, how would it make you feel? And we just ask that you give us the same respect that you would expect in the classroom. I wouldn't have said that had I not known how important it was to pay attention to that information. And case in point, when we talk about the AAPSL Task 1, things we're going to talk about are things that we really shouldn't have to talk about because of how well it was presented and what was said. Some of the obvious things that we had to send back in our review. So we're asking, please, please, please adhere to those norms. Is very, very important. Now, I only said that because I care about you, and you're our children right now. So we have spoken to our children, and we're going to move on. Dr. Revis is the mom, and I'm the daddy this semester, okay? We still love you. Dr. Revis, let's go ahead and start just briefly talk about what we saw with the AAPSL Task 1 review and the peer reviews that should have already come in.
Okay, well, I just want to say my AAPSL Task 1, my students did a phenomenal job with it, albeit this is going to be the easiest task that you will do. And I'm glad that we start out this way. I felt like you guys followed the template really well. You aligned to the rubric. You did exactly what you were supposed to do within each section. My weakest point for my students was some APA issues, which we're gonna hit a little bit tonight. Some of the things that we saw keep coming up. I will say that I was a little short with one of my students. She asked me about formatting an appendix entry, and I just said, you need to look it up. Don't ask me how to do APA. You've got a manual, and I promise you the only way you will learn it is when you've got to look it up and dig it out. So I'm not an expert on APA. And typically, um, you know, when you ask me things, I've got to go look it up. So, you just need to look it up and learn how to use that manual, and you will learn it. I promise you, you will learn it quickly. How about your task one?
Dr. Evans, I agree. The quality of the work was phenomenal. I mean, the different parts of the of task one were adhered to the research. I have no qualms with any of that. The only problem I have was with the APA, and again, I realize it's a learning curve. However, I feel like that some of it would not have been as intense as it was had you gone back and reviewed and looked at some things. So our challenge is the only way, it gets better each week. And I talked to a student today, and what I told her was, I said, you've got to rethink things because it was dealing with proper nouns. And I said, it's hard for us because that's what we're used to. But with APA 7th edition, it defies all of the rules for capitalization that we typically work with, right, Dr. Revis? And
It sure does. Yeah, it's very strange.
it is, but it is what it is, and you've got to adhere to those rules. And what I told her was, I said, if you have to think about it too much, it probably does not need to be capitalized. you know, typically that's a good rule of thumb. I would ask you to, some of us are not, we're real good at this, but we may not be real good at that. So, grammar may not be everybody's forte. However, if comma usage or things of that nature, sentence structure, is a problem for you, I would find somebody that I worked with that had a minute or two that they could look over my work, not to look at the APA, but just to look at the grammar and the structure to say, does this sound right? Or, do you see any comma problems in there or things like that? Because that is not a strength for everybody. So, I would ask that you consider that. But all in all, I would have to say that the quality of the work for task one was I would put it as some of the best that I've gotten from a first semester class, Dr. Revis,
I
overall.
would too. I would too. One thing I want to ask you to do is to start numbering your pages. Go to your APA format, and it'll tell you how to number your pages, where to put the numbers. Because when I'm giving feedback and when you give feedback, it will be easier for us to reference where the errors are if we have page numbers.
Revis, will say this: there were a few. Remember, when you submit task one for review, that's all we want to see. We don't want to see all of the stuff for task two, task three, task four, and task five that you've got to do. We only want to see that task. Now, you're going to submit task one by the end of this week for a final grade. Some of you have already done that. And you're going to be working on task two. When you send task two to us to review, we don't want to see task one with that. And I'm going to tell you why. It's a lot of trouble for us with as many students as we to have to scroll down and find it. All we want to see is task two. However, if task one has been approved and you've already cleared it in Blackboard, you've got your grade on it, then I would begin saving a running document that had task 1 completed and task 2 attached to it, so that by the time you finish this process, you will have all 5 pieces together, and your final work will be, it'll be minimal, putting it all together and putting that final, the AAPSL document in for a final submission and a final grade. But we only want to see 1 task at a time to review. Okay.
And one thing you can do, for example, everybody had at least 2 appendix entries, Appendix A and Appendix B. Your entries for task 2, you can start them at Appendix C. That way you don't have to label them when you put it all together. The same thing for figures. I don't think any of my students had a figure this time, but you will in task 2. You can keep that running consecutively throughout the different tasks. Okay?
I did have a couple, but they did not put it in there as a figure by APA standards. If you use any graphic information at all in the body of your work, you have to identify it as a figure. Any graphic information, it has to be identified as a figure. So you have to follow the rules for that. Dr. Revis, I will say that for the appendices, I had a few issues with that. Remember, you have the heading appendices, bold-faced and centered. And then you double space, and then in the center, you're going to have Appendix A. And then you're going to have whatever you have for Appendix A. Then you're going to come down. You're going to have space it correctly in the center, Appendix B. And there were some issues. I had to send it back with some issues with writing the appendix, the Appendix A and Appendix B for the appendices section correctly. There were a few that I had to send back. Your reference section must be in ABC order. It must be in ABC order, and only a couple with not double spacing the text and hanging indents. You know, that was an issue with some, but for the most part, most had gotten that. My biggest issues were with APA capitalization, writing numbers, and
in-text citations.
Citation. Those were the 3 biggies.
And we're going to review that in just a minute, folks. So,
and
you'll get it.
With peer reviews, remember, as of 6 o'clock today, peer reviews were due. So if you didn't submit it, if you haven't submitted it by 6 o'clock today, then what I did, I put zeros in. We have to adhere to timelines and schedules, and most of the students did. And then again, it's for you to practice how to give valid feedback. But this is also helping. That's why it's called a peer review. Your work should be of the quality that your peers can read it, and it helps them to edit for a more accomplished final submission. And I said that on my feedback on a lot of the work that I looked at. The question has been asked. Some people work at different levels. The drop dead time is 6 o'clock on Tuesday at 6 o'clock, but I would encourage you don't need to wait until then. Now, a student asked me today, they said, Dr. Stedman, What if you've given me the feedback and I've gotten one of my peer reviews back and I'm ready to do my editing, and here it is Monday afternoon, and I'm still waiting. So I would say that you reach out to Dr. Revis and me if that's the case and you're ready, and we'll tell you what you can and cannot do based on the work that you're doing, but we're not going to hold you hostage. Then what if by 6 o'clock today that somebody has not done a peer review and don't, or they have not submitted their work? If you are supposed to peer review somebody's work and they have not submitted their work in a timely manner, then by Sunday at 6 o'clock, then you don't have to wait on them. You find somebody else's work to peer review. Do not allow somebody to hold you hostage. However, if you were to you send Dr. Revis and me an email just saying this is what I'm doing, and we will deal with the person that is not doing what they're supposed to do. But that's okay. The third thing, and Dr. Revis and I have talked about this, hold your peers accountable. You're in a Zoom team, and it should be a norm. I would establish this as a norm. You should be able to hold each other accountable. And I'm looking at Elizabeth and Julie right now. Let's say that Elizabeth and Julie are on the same team. I don't think they are, but let's say that they are. Okay. Well, let's just say that and both of them have done fine, so I can use them as an example. Let's just say that that Julie is supposed to peer review Elizabeth's work, and Elizabeth is waiting on Julie. She's done everything else, and she's just waiting on Julie. She should have that relationship with Julie enough that she can say, Julie, I'm waiting on your work. When can I expect a peer review so I can move on? You should be able to support each other enough and not be offended if they reach out to you, and be able to do that. What do y'all think about that? Do you think that that's a good idea? I think we're grown, and we should be able to hold each other accountable, for those things. And that really would help us sometime, because it'll force us to go ahead and to get it done. Okay.
Really, what you should do in your routine is you should start working on giving feedback on your peer reviews Sunday night. That needs to be your standard thing that you do after 6 p.m., after you turn your assignment in, is to go in and start working on your peer reviews. That needs to be something that you do, and get in that routine of doing that Sunday night and Monday night, so that you're submitting. And don't forget, you've got to submit it in two places. You've got to submit it back in the thread for the person for whom you're reviewing, and you have to submit it in the peer review final Dropbox for Dr. Stedman and me to be able to grade.
Dr. Revis, also, I had a few that made this mistake. Remember, we are not in the AAPSL. We are in the AAPSL. Do not go down to the bottom and go to the AAPSL and work has been submitted, and I have to go, we have to go over there and find it. We have to open up and manually go in and delete that, because it works in the wrong place. And when you get to the AAPSL, if we don't take it out, then you can't submit your work when it comes to the AAPSL time. So there's a lot of time involved in doing this. So we ask you, please, please, please pay attention. I have sent emails to a couple of students today that you need to resubmit the AAPSL peer review for one of your peers because you submitted it in the wrong place. Once you resubmit it in the right place, then I'll go in and take it out of the wrong place. So please pay attention to that, okay? Dr. Revis, I think that we can move on, and
But I just want to say one thing about the quality of the peer reviews from my
Oh,
class.
yes,
They were outstanding.
they were.
Outstanding.
They were. I mean, overall, again, I can say they probably overall they were probably the best I've ever had,
Mhm.
as a whole group. And I looked at, because I've got two classes to grade, I looked at 33 different students the weekend. So I was highly pleased with that. I will say that if you got a 90, that meant that you did what you were supposed to do. It was basic feedback, but there was more that you could have done. You needed to have been more intentional about some things. Maybe your weaknesses, some of you shied away a little bit from that. Don't ever say, I don't see any weaknesses. We challenged you to find something that they can improve on. So at this point, you cannot get by with that. Okay? We're not going to let you get by with that at this point. If you got a 95, that meant that it was very, very good, but there probably was one area that you could have enhanced. And I didn't go in there and say you need to go back and you need to figure out, how can I improve this. Now a 90 is very good, a 95 is very good, but you could get 100 on this easily if you would just up the ante a little bit. Okay.
All right. Do you want me to share my screen and we'll look at the
Yes,
APA review?
let me start review.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So what I did here was I just pulled out, and these are some examples from your work this week from my class, and of course with no names. So if you recognize your work, I'm not picking on you. I left it anonymous. I just wanted to find some authentic errors that I saw very often. So the first thing, hold on.
Dr. Evans, let me say to my class, you and I had a conversation about this. So it's okay that she's using her class. We had collaborated on what Dr. Evans was going to look for.
Okay. So I saw this a lot. I want you to read this. A professional learning community is a collaboration of teachers, administrators, parents, students who work together to seek out best practices, test them in the classroom, continually improve the processes, and focus on results. Rick DeFore, 2002. The first thing that is wrong, well, let me give you just a moment to look at it. And then let me give you the correct way. Professional learning community is not capitalized, and they have established their acronyms. So from here on out, they're going to use the PLC. All right. Very nicely done was there was no capitalization through here. A lot of people think we capitalize administrators, but we don't. The other thing that I always do, my eyes go to this. You see an end quotation mark, but there is no beginning quotation mark. Now, I'm assuming that this is, if it were a direct quote, then there would need to be a beginning quote and an ending quotation. In this example, we do not cite the author's first name, Dufour, 2002. Now, if it were a direct quote, then we would need to have a page number as well. Only use page or paragraph numbers if it's an online resource without numbered pages, then in a direct quote. Okay. Next. Very common. You see the period here. That's a no-no. No period at the end of the sentence. If your reference, if this is called a parenthetical in-text citation, the period comes at the end. This person has a period here and here, only at the end.
I had several that had that problem, Dr. Revis.
Mm-hmm. And remember the use of at all. There is no comma here. Okay. There is no period after the at, period after all, comma, and date. Okay.
Dr. Revis, and I would remind you that even though before you do a final submission, I don't care. We're not going to catch everything. So when we go over these, your eyes need to go back over your own work again and look at this. Even though we've said to move on, we may have missed some of these things. I'm sure I did.
Right. And then we have this sentence structure. Finally, there is me. I'm a computer science teacher. I'm the department chair, a new teacher mentor, and lead to this PLC. So to make this a stronger sentence, first, I would take this phrase out and just say, finally, I am the computer science teacher, lowercase, department chair, lowercase, mentor, lowercase, lead, lowercase. All right, here's a review on numbers. When we use percentages, our numbers rule can be changed just a little bit, okay? 20% should be written as 20 with a numeral, and anytime you write numerals, then you can use the percent symbol. You use the percentage symbol when they are accompanied by a numeral only. 40 7/10%, which is how this person wrote that, since the 40.7 is over 10 or above, you write it as a numeral and then your percentage sign. And then with the 2%, you've got two options. You can either use the numeral and a percent there, or if you spell it out, which, you know, your rule of thumb is you spell numbers 0 to 9 out, that's okay if you do that, but then you would follow it with the percent written out. So I would say, like in this last one, you used a lot of percentages when you were describing the demographic makeup of your school. I would say use straight percentage symbols. It makes it easier to read rather than jumping back and forth between writing the number out and the percent out in words if you were just do 2%, because you're going to have 20% or 40.7%. In your task 2, you're going to be reporting a lot of percentages. So keep this in mind.
Dr. Revis, I would remind you too that whichever one you choose to do, make sure that you're consistent throughout your work. We shouldn't see the number 2% and then the word 2%, you know, in your work. So be consistent. Whatever you're going to do it throughout.
But the exception to the rule in being able to write this as a numeral is because you're going to follow it with a percent sign.
Right.
All right, let's look at references. What is wrong with this? My eyes quickly go and see no hanging indent. And then I know that this is the title of an article in a journal, because the journal article title is written in italics. All of these words need some work. When you're writing the title of a journal, only the first word is capitalized and after a colon or semicolon in a conjunction, such as the colon or semicolon. The first word after that. All this qualitative study, schools, learning organization, all that's lowercase. All this is lowercase. All of it. Okay. That is very different from what we are accustomed to. Now, the title of the journal article, journal is entitled case. And of course, this is your issue and volume and then the page numbers. Some of you need to check on your Word document on the spacing. Let me get out of this and I'll show you where to check, because you're getting some extra spaces between your paragraphs and things like that. So it would be right here. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. It'd be right here. Make sure you've got double space. And down here, it does give you an option usually to add a space before and add a space after paragraphs. Make sure you have no extra spaces. Everything should be double spaced between section headings, paragraphs, references, everything.
And from one entry to the next.
Exactly. Okay, Dr. Stedman, that's
Okay.
my little piece.
And I think that's enough. What we ask you to do is to, Dr. Revis and Dr. Hamilton designed it, but they gave you a cheat sheet last week, and that was a checklist. I would print off that checklist, and I would make me one for each week I was turning, and I would use it. I would just check it off to see, have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? And it will help you with that, or come up with your own format, whatever works for you. But I would have something so that by the time I got ready to submit my work, even for review, that it was as accomplished as you possibly can send it to us and to your peers when it comes for review.
Let's talk a little bit about when you're going to turn this back in to us to review again. I didn't have anyone, Dr. Stedman. I had one person make a 99, just a couple very minor things they had to do. And let's talk about when those revisions are due. They are due Thursday to us, no later than Thursday.
6 o'clock.
Now, once you turn them in to us, it's back in that same thread. We're still in the review process. We look at them, make sure you have addressed everything that we told you to address, because this is your last shot at it. So once you turn that in on Thursday, we look at it again, and then if you forgot to correct something, your grade will reflect that, but it's time to put it in the assignment drop box for a final grade.
And Dr. Revis, I was a little lenient because I had several that were ahead of the game, and they sent it to me. And first of all, remember this. Rule of thumb: you do not submit anything ever for a final grade until we have put it in writing to you. Submit to the AAPSL assignment Dropbox. You're cleared. That means that we've done all that we're going to do, and you're ready to move on. So don't get ahead of the game. I had a few that did that. I sent it back, and just remember, don't get ahead of the process. And it's not a race game. While we're running against time, I'd rather you take an extra hour, not past the deadline, but schedule your time so that that you're not at the last minute submitting something, or you can't, don't think about how fast can I get this in there. We want you to be conscious of that, but don't let that be your driving force and it overshadow you able to look at your work and to give it the quality review that you need to give it, before it comes to us. This week should be a lot better than this coming week, than this week, because you now have seen what we expect. You've heard what we expect. So those things ought to be ringing in your head, and you ought to be able to visualize it, whenever it comes to your work this week. So this work this week, Dr. Revis, even though it's a harder task, the work as far as how you do it, how you write it, the APA concerns, they should be much more minimal compared to the things that we saw this week. Each week, it should get better and better and better. Okay.
And it will. But I just want to say, overall, it's some of the strongest work I've ever had.
It really was. It sounds like we're fussing, but we're not. We're just pointing out things because I truly am. And Dr. Revis, I've had 3 or 4 they've cleared today, and it's already in the AAPSL assignment Dropbox. They've cleared with hundreds on their final work. So
what you want to shoot for is 100 on the review and 100 in the final Dropbox. Right. That's your goal. And it's easy to do if you'll just correct those things that we tell you to correct.
Okay. Okay, let me share the screen again. Okay, let me minimize that. We're going to go. I'm not going to do the Blackboard overview. We're going to go on into task 2, and then we'll talk about that if we need to at the end. Let me see.
Well, they are getting real good in finding where things go.
Exactly.
And you will get used to everything, where everything goes.
Okay, I want to remind you again. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr. Stammen. Go ahead.
remember, anytime you see yellow, that means you got to write something. That's narrative. Remember, if you see red, that means that those are hints, helpful hints, suggestions of things to do. Once you use it or you don't use it or whatever, you have to delete it. It goes away. Nothing you submit keeps this yellow highlighting. You have to take that away. And then if it's in black, everything in black, remember, stays. Most people got, I think most people got that. There were a few. We've gone over this already, but we're going to go over it again, just as if you've never heard it before. Okay? Remember, we said that as you approached task 1, that don't go into it with preconceived ideas. You may think you know what the most pressing need is, but your data dive and task 2 would lead you to that, or should lead you to that decision. However, once you will have done what the responsibility is for task 2 when you do that. When you present to your administration, and you'll have to do that, you will go before them and you'll say, at the conclusion of all of this, we have done blah, 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 and you'll go down the list of what we've done and explain all that, and you'll say, and the analysis of the team is that our most pressing need, based on our data dive, our research and everything, is, and you will say what it is. Your principal may just fold their arms back, and they may just look over their glasses and say, well, that's good. But I just, I want you to work on so-and-so because that's what I feel as the CEO of this school, what the most pressing need is. Guess what? You got to do what your principal says. But you're going to tell them what you found, you and the team have found. Then you're going to do what they tell you to do. Now, if you've got a great relationship with your principal, you may be able to say, can we negotiate this? Can we talk about it more? And you may be able to convince them to let you move in the direction. And I'm going to tell you why. You actually can be, Dr. Revis and I have been sitting principals. And so there were many times, Dr. Revis, that I can remember, that I had 4 burners on the stove, but I had 5 things that need to be cooked. So I had to put one thing off the burner. And so I had to decide which one thing I couldn't cook. I'm just using an analogy. There's always something that needs attention that you can't always get to. So you can be that fifth arm, that fifth burner, and you can say, this is an opportunity for me to be able to do, along with the team, that one thing that you wish could be done that you just haven't had time to do, and that actually could be your most pressing need, that you found. There's lots of ways to look at this, but let's look at prompt 1. You've done your team's been together. You've got your norms established. You've already talked about what a PLC looks like and all of this stuff. Now you're getting down into the real meat of what you're supposed to do. Again, task 2, prompt 1, your heading's going to be data collection strategies. You will work with your PLC team formed in task 1 to determine the strategies that will be used to collect the data, determine the most pressing need for improving student achievement. The narrative work for this section will discuss those strategies. Now, I want you to just look at the example. And again, you have this information. This person says, when I first asked for permission to form my PLC, my principal suggested the team and I that we form looked at the 8th grade math data as she believed it was the most pressing area of the need. You see, the principal had a preconceived idea based on his or her work with the school. And they said, so I set up a PLC meeting via Zoom at this time. This was during COVID, I think. And anyway, it goes on to talk about everything that they've pulled. They used the data from the 2018-19, since it was the last valid data that we had. Now, you've got more valid data than that. And remember, we said that the current data has been released already. So I would use that. I would use the previous year's data and the previous year's data before that. I would look at least the most recent 3 consecutive years of data, because that can, when you're doing your data dive, you can look at trends. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and this year, are the problems the same in the same areas? If that's it, I mean, immediately something's going to stand out with that. Look at your EVOS data, and Dr. Lamb is going to actually talk about EVOS tomorrow, and he's going to really open your eyes to some things. And Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Crawford, who have to live EVOS every day of their lives, are going to share some things with you as well. There are other things. You can look at your state report card. If you are and if you have MAP assessment, if you do Study Island at your school, if you've got a computer-based program that you do math with, anything like that can give you valid results, you can put that on the table as a part of the data. So all you're doing here is pulling everything that you possibly think that you can use. Now, this is where your team comes in. in place. And again, I'm going to pick on Julie again. Julie can say, when she goes before her team, I found this, and this. But guess what? Elizabeth on her team can say, well, Julie, did you think about so-and-so? So Elizabeth may think about something that Julie never even thought about. So that's where your team, becomes a part of this process as well. But you need to go into your meeting with things already prepared for your meeting. That's part of the leader and leading your team. Dr. Revis, can you think of anything that I would have missed in that part?
No, and of course, if you're looking at K2, you can use your K2 assessment data. You want to use standardized testing data now. Not on this one. I really don't think you have time. If you do common formative assessments, you may not have time to even look at that, but you need to stay with your standardized data.
And your benchmark data.
Right. If you do work keys,
right.
Make sure you look at trend data.
Right.
I really think that is important.
Okay. Dr. Revis, you want to go to number 2?
Sure. So in number 2, your heading is criteria and process for identifying the most pressing need. So you just talk about how you facilitated and how you led your PLC to decide how they wanted to identify the most pressing need. For some of you, it may be that you wanted to look at different performance of different subgroups, and you decided after you looked at everything, that's what you wanted to look at. Or for some of you, it may be that you looked at curriculum, strands of the curriculum. But you want to make sure that you describe how, and look at this example. Here's what we did first. Here was the second step. Here is the third step. Now, we're not asking you to identify that most pressing need in this section. You're talking about the criteria and process. Okay?
Okay. Then the third section is, your heading is collaborative data analysis. Collaborative means that you're not working by yourself, you're working with your team. Once steps 1 and 2 have been completed, the team and you will take a detailed look of all data that has been gathered. I look at it as having a brand new puzzle that you pour all the pieces out on the table, and you begin looking at each piece individually, and you categorize, and you look at, how when you put a puzzle together, you find all the pieces that are blue and you put it together, or you find all the ends and you put it together before you start putting your puzzle together. That you're kind of putting the puzzle pieces together, and you're analyzing it to actually see, what is it that I do have? What do we have? Talk about it. Tear it apart. And again, as the leader, you need to lead this discussion, and then you need to go around, what Julie sees, Elizabeth may see something differently by looking at the same thing. So this is where that collaboration comes in, and everybody has some say-so in it. And as you're tearing all of this apart, you should thoroughly disaggregate the data by looking at all groups, subgroups, etc. Make sure you cover every angle possible. In your narrative work, you're just simply going to narratively say, this is what we did. You're going to talk about that process. And again, this example, the collaborative, and they simply said, our second PLC meeting met on Zoom again to evaluate and analyze the data that had been identified from the North Carolina report card as well as EVOS. In reviewing this data, and then it goes on to talk about the process. And that's all you're doing. You're narratively telling the story about what you and the team did as you looked at all
And you
of it.
notice in this section, um, they're reporting data.
Right.
Okay. You narratively report some of your data, the data that kind of resonated with the PLC, what kind of jumped out at them.
Right, because now if you find a trend and you realize that that there's been a 3-year trend or a 2-year trend with this subgroup, then you need to talk about that in 2021-22, 67% of blah blah blah, and you talk about did not meet proficiency or scored level 2. What does it specifically tell you? And then what did it look like in 2000, 2022, 23? The same thing. You're looking at the same subgroup.
Now, when you're looking at subgroups, guys, it should not be any surprise to you that there is going to be a gap, probably a pretty significant gap between from your special needs population or EC students with disabilities and all students. There is going to be a gap there. There will also be a gap with your English language learners. So expect that. It's not saying you don't address it, but you can expect that there are going to be some significant gaps in those areas.
Okay, and after they've done all of that, Dr. Revis, what's next?
All right, and here's kind of your culminating thing. Identifying your most pressing need, and the title of your section is Most Pressing Need. So you go through and narratively describe how you determine with your PLC how you facilitated the process of identifying the most pressing need. You can talk about, did you disagree, and how did you come to consensus about this? It may be something that you didn't expect, or it may be something different than your principal was pointing you to, and that is okay. Just talk about it. Describe that process, and describe the last sentence is key. You need to clearly define the most pressing need that you agreed upon.
And they identify their most pressing need at the front, but we do prefer you talk about it first, and then you say in conclusion, our most pressing need is. Or the
Now, your PLC is going to very quickly want to start identifying interventions and strategies. Do not do that here. We are only identifying the most pressing need. You get to that in your third task, and you're going to have to do some research. So just try to get we're just identifying the need. Next, we will do some research on how to address that. Okay?
Now, this test, prompt 2 has 2 tasks. Second task is, okay, you've talked about all of this stuff in task 1. Now you're going to have to talk about it a little bit, but you're going to visually represent everything or a lot of what you've talked about in task 1. Prompt 1 requires all narrative work, while prompt 2 requires graphic representation. However, when we say requires graphic representation, you must always have some narrative work so that the reader or the viewer can know what they're looking at. You just don't put a picture there or a graph there and not talk about it. Number 5, you will graphically represent the work done narratively in prompt 1 in the form of charts, tables, graphs, etc. These visuals are to be used to illustrate and support the data analysis and conclusions. Okay, Dr. Revis, they're going to show charts tables, graphs, etc. But number 6, what are they going to identify every one of those things as?
And this goes against APA a little bit. And so for those of you who've been in a higher ed course recently with APA, you know that certain tables should be tables and so on and so forth. We're going to call them all figures. That's just to make it simple for you. But there is correct formatting to figures. Guess what, friends? Look in your APA manual how to format a figure.
And that go back to week 2 when Dr. Revis and Dr. Hamilton they went over what a figure looks like step by step. That's in week 2 in that video as well. So I mean it's mapped out for you. And remember, it's going to be figure 1. I mean figure 1, figure 2, figure 3. That's correct, right, Dr.
Right.
Okay.
And again, don't just put a series of figures up there. You
Right.
have to provide the context through a narrative. All right.
Okay.
So task 2 has 2 pieces, 2 prompts.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's again. What should Revis, if they've done task 1 and they've disaggregated all that data, when they get to number 5, and they have a lot of stuff on the table, how should they decide what these charts, tables, graphs, etc., what they need to look like? What would they can't put everything there? So
Right.
what do you think that should be?
Well, I would go back to my section where you are looking at the process that you use you're looking at all this data and you're coming to you got all this data and you're narrowing it down to your most pressing need. That's how I would think about doing this. Present the data in your figures that tell the story of how you got to your most pressing need.
Right, because Dr. Evans, if you come to me, I'm the principal of the school, and you say, well, the most pressing need is, I'm going to say, well, show me what you're talking about. Help me understand.
Yeah. How'd you get there?
Yeah, so your visual should be, you're telling me, but show me. Show me. Show me. So when you get to this part, this should be the show me part. When you sit down with your principal, you should be able to show your principal, this is why the team and I are saying that this is the most pressing need. That's what you need to show. That's about as simple as you can put it, right, Dr. Revis?
I think so. Now, it is not unusual for you to have more than one meeting this week coming up.
Right.
Hopefully, if you go in there yourself and you have already prepared some data and some disaggregated data sets, hopefully you can work your way through it pretty quickly. But don't just go in there with all this pile of data and think that in one meeting you're going to work your way through it. You can't. You cannot. But on the other side of the coin, don't you already have everything laid out so much that you're doing the decision making about the most pressing need? We have to see that you're leading your team through that process.
Okay. Then you're going to have you're going to have the reference section, and the references. If you have done any research, and you may have your research, that's where your references go. And then your appendices, again, you're always going to have, at a minimum, your appendices will have an agenda and minutes of your meeting at a minimum. With that. Now, once they do that, Dr. Revis, what are okay? They've done all of this. Now, what do they have to do once they have determined what the most pressing need, and they have graphically represented it.
What you have to do now is you have to present it to your admin/leadership team. And you have to prepare for that. You would want to do a slideshow and an agenda, and you talk about how you took the data and you lead them through the process that you led your team through and came up with your most pressing need. So that's a lot to do in 1 week. Do you think we can expect them to have this presentation done by Sunday at 6?
No. What you will have to do is you will submit. Now, if you can get it done, by all means, go ahead and do it. Most of you will not be able to. So what we would expect to see by Sunday evening at 6 o'clock, and hopefully most of your work before then, is we need to see everything except the presentation. However, you must indicate in there, and you just put a filler in there, a disclaimer, and you need to tell us, highlight it. You need to tell us that my presentation to the principal or an administration team is, and it should be the first part of the week. You need to get it done that Monday, hopefully, no, Tuesday at the latest, but Monday, if you can get in there, you got to get it over with. Because when you submit this back to Dr. Revis and me for your final review, this must be in the final review. It will not be there for the most part when you do your peer reviews, but it must be in there for the final review when it comes to Dr. Revis and me.
Yeah, and this is a short week for everybody. So, I would suggest you shooting an email to your admin. And if you can't get the whole team together, don't worry about it. Get together who you can. And I would go ahead and set that up for next Monday afternoon, or whenever you can schedule it with them. Dr. Stebbin, what if the principal is on their PLC?
If the principal's on the PLC, then you need to indicate that narratively. And I would actually, as proof, have a picture of me presenting with my principal there if they would allow. And then that's, if the principal's on your PLC and they're there when you're doing all of this, then that saves you work.
But you have to say that. You have to say,
right.
Since my principal has been an active member of our PLC, I do not have to give a separate presentation, because your evaluator is going to look for this, guys. If you don't put something down, they're going to mark you down on it.
Now, what if you reach out to your principal and the principal does not have time? Find an assistant principal. You must present to administration. I would include in that, even if they're not on my team, if I've got a literacy coach or somebody, I would have them in that presentation as well. But try to get to your principal if at all possible, because they're really going to be the ones that determine whether you can move forward with that most pressing need as your identified PLC.
And then your data presentation, when you write that up, it would just be, you can put your slide deck in your appendices. This person put a figure 3, the presentation to the at PLC meeting via Zoom and all, etc. But you have to write a little bit about it and talk about what you presented.
Now, see, this is some of their figures, some of the work. This is a part of their identified most pressing need. Now, when you present, remember your slide deck. If there's 5 slides, then we should be able to see all 5 slides, and we should be able to read them. Don't make them so small that we can't read what's on those slides or see what's on that slide. If there's 10 slides, then we should need to see the 10 slides, and this would be a part of your appendices.
And don't give us a Google link
No.
to go to your slides. Just put them in, you know, how you can print them off and do screenshots of your slides. Just make them big enough for us to see.
Okay. Stop share.
Are you on low overload?
Does it make sense? What we're talking to you about, does it make sense? Okay. Okay, wait,
It's
wait,
really,
hold just a
it's
second.
really a great time of year, guys, because in North Carolina, you're just getting your new data back. In South Carolina, I understand it's not going to be back until later on, but you use your most recent data. And so you will be rolling your sleeves up and facilitating this discussion.
Dr. Revis, before we go into questions and answers, do you have anything that you would like to share about the internship at this time, or do you think that we're okay until maybe next week?
I think we're okay, unless, you know, does anybody have any questions on their clinical piece at this time? Everybody's made contact with their CC1.
Okay, and make sure now, if you haven't heard from your CC1, then you need to let us know. And I still have 2 people that I'm waiting to get scheduled appointments with, Dr. Revis. So, but
Okay.
with that, okay, have at it. Questions? Okay, Liz.
I met with my CC1 today on Zoom, and we were looking for clarification whether the 100 hours for the AAPSL can just be written on one line, or if we need to kind of itemize each piece. Which is it?
Itemize.
We must see the different components of things. It's just too easy to say 100. We need to see actually what was done. And remember that you need to show evidence of, even in using the PLC, show evidence of your leadership as much as you can in those itemizing those areas.
And Liz, we put a new example in the it's in the clinical part of our shell.
Yes.
And it shows how to do that. Okay.
So can we copy some of those segments and just enter in our
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
I made them up, but sure.
Okay, Jeffrey.
When we create the data presentation as a PLC and talk about that, can I use that to share with my admin and discuss how we got to our pressing need that way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Wise use of time, Jeffrey.
Right. Wanda.
Okay, on the AAPSL Task 1, you've graded my assignment, but you didn't state that I can put it in the Dropbox. So what do I
Okay.
need to do?
No, because you've not sent it back for a second review. Remember, if you've gone through the peer review process and you've made corrections, you have to send it back to me for a second review, and that's when I will tell you.
Okay, so when you reviewed it and graded it, and I corrected it and resubmitted, which I've submitted it twice, I need to submit it a third time.
If you have to have gone through the peer review process, and you always put on there that you've completed that process and that you're ready for a final review from me.
Okay.
Because
You should.
what happens, Wanda, they get caught up in the dialogue, and sometimes we may miss it if you don't identify it as, that you're ready for us to give a final look at it.
When
Okay,
you
so
put your
although you provided the grade,
it will change. It will get revised.
If it gets revised, you get a second chance at, if you didn't get 100 on it the first time, you get a chance to get 100 on it the second time.
okay,
And then,
I did receive the 100 the second time
okay,
plus.
well, then that could have been an oversight on my part. So if I gave you 100 the second time, go ahead and submit it to me.
Put in the drop. Okay.
But
Yeah.
Wanda's brought up a good point.
Yes.
Make sure that when you resubmit your work for us to review again, that you put in AAPSL Task 1 revised, so that we're going to see all that stuff. We'll see your first submission. We see your peer reviews. Make sure it's clear which one is your revised Task 1.
Okay,
And
I have another
And
question. Go ahead.
Wanda, I could have overlooked that because we're looking at so much work, and then getting distracted and then going back to something. I could have simply failed to have told you to do that.
Okay, no problem. And my other question was, on the peer review, we haven't talked about the Zoom link and YouTube. Is there a reason why we haven't at this point?
Yeah, because you're not ready for your Zoom teams yet to meet. I mean, you can do that on your own, but
Okay.
you're not ready to do that as an assignment at this point. All of you know how to do Zoom. All of you ought to be experts in Zoom by now. But you can Zoom anytime and meet with your teams on your own. But we haven't done it as an assignment yet. Okay. Elizabeth?
Yes, I have a question about kind of the format of the two different tasks. And so when we put you guys reference the slide decks that we're using and making sure that we see each of those slides, does that go in the data presentation section? Which section should those figures go in?
In your appendices. Is that?
Yeah,
okay?
in task 2, you're going to create a figure in the body of the text.
Yes, ma'am.
But the slide deck that you create to do your presentation should be in your appendices.
Okay. And then you need to see all, like say our slide deck has 6 slides. We may use some of the same figures if we use the same PowerPoint, like Jeffrey just mentioned. We may use some of the same figures.
And that's okay, but
Okay.
you would have to put them down there, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I have a secondary question really quickly. I was looking at the week plan in Blackboard. Are all of our revisions to the task going to be due on Thursdays, or like is that the consistent routine, or will it be sent?
Yes.
Okay.
The revisions and the reason, Elizabeth, for that is that if you wait until Sunday when the work is due to send it for revision that day, we can't do it all. And if you want good feedback on your final work, then we have to get it prior to that Sunday. Okay, Tanya?
But you don't have to wait till Thursday.
No. If you get it before Thursday, I love it as soon as you can get it to me. Can't hear you. Can't hear you, Tanya.
Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that. The Thursday, I didn't hear what time Dr. Revis said Thursday for revisions.
By 6 o'clock.
6, okay, 6 like normal.
6
okay.
is the magic number, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, 6. That's a good music song. Sorry.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sorry I uploaded my final to the completed before I had your second approval.
Okay. This
That
time,
makes
if
sense.
there's a problem, I'll send it back this time.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So I did upload it back to the correct place though, and I put revised.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Alicia?
May I add another person to my team?
Yes, you may.
Okay, because I have, it's 5, but I have another teacher, another grade level, that I think could be very helpful as
And
far
then
as the
all you do is go back, and you can always go back and revise anything that you can add to what's already been done. So you would just add that information to that
for the
part of task
selection.
1. Yeah. Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Now I think there was also one other question. Was there something in this part that talked about a video? We don't have to do a video.
It's recommended but not required.
Okay. All right, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Amber.
I just had one quick question. When we
Okay.
do task 2, do we need to also have the title page?
No.
No,
All you've
no.
got to do is just put task 2. You will use the title page when you put it all together at the end of the AAPSL process.
Okay, so we won't put that on any more of the, okay.
No, not
Just-
until
just start-
not until the end.
Just make sure you start task 2 and leave in the narrative work that's in the template. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Davia.
Hi, my question is twofold. I was previously, well, until today, in Dr. Hamilton's class, and I got the email that I was dropped and was added to Dr. Crawford's class, but of course the link took me here today, so I hope I'm in the right place. But I'm not.
No.
But you're getting good information here.
But
So
you are, but you'll be okay because it's the same stuff. But you're still with Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Crawford. What happened because there were 2 different things going on with those groups of students. Dr. Hamilton had an overload of students and Dr. Crawford did not. So they balanced the number of students in each class. So you still have both of them, but Dr. Crawford will be considered your primary instructor and Dr. Hamilton will be your coach too. And but you're going to get everything you need.
Sounds good, because I did notice that all my assignments and stuff that I submitted disappeared. So I wasn't sure what was going on.
Well, the reason they disappeared is because they're now in Dr. Crawford's Blackboard shell.
Okay.
Not in Dr. Hamilton's, but Dr. Crawford's.
I would suggest emailing Dr. Crawford to get a correct link to his Tuesday night class.
And if you have to, Davia, call Dr. Hamilton and reach out to her if you have to.
Okay, will do.
Okay, but we were glad to have you tonight.
Well, it was good information, so thank you.
Great. Okay, Liz.
Yes, I am struggling a little bit with the rapid speed of the PLC meetings that need to happen. And I'm trying to work within a pre-existing structure for a committee that is being my PLC. So just so I can communicate with my members moving forward, should I anticipate having at least 1 meeting weekly for the next however many weeks? Yes.
I would say yes for the next 3 weeks. When you get to task 5, you will not need to do a meeting, but for task 3 and task 4, task 2, 3, and 4, yes.
Okay,
And
so
and then there will be a break of about a couple of weeks, and then when you get to the AAPTL, you won't need to have as many meetings, but you will have to have at least a couple to 3 during that process as well.
Okay, so I think what I heard you say earlier is if we need to pare down our members or change the structure, it's okay to go back to task 1 and cut out some of what we thought was going to be the case so that it's accurately depicting what it is moving forward. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Liz. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, does that help?
It does. I feel like I need to do a lot of begging now, but I will get it. We'll get it done.
You'll do it. You'll do it. Adrian?
Okay, I think I feel like Liz. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I'm going to try my best to get everything done. I have to do my PLCs on Friday because we have so many other things going on that it's just crazy. We were talking about it today as teachers that we have meetings and stuff during our planning on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Mhm.
So I had to have mine on Friday. So I'm gonna have to get all this stuff done, and hopefully we get it all done because I'm not gonna have another chance to meet with them this week. So anyway, that was just a thought.
And remember, sometimes it's okay if they'll agree to do a virtual meeting.
Okay, yeah, that's a good thought.
Just remember that.
Right, right.
Okay. Okay,
I'm
Brandon.
over here freaking out like, oh my God. And two,
Okay.
I have in my head, I was really, and I felt the same way last week when we had to put everything in, and I didn't have to call, but I just want to make sure with Dr. Revis that I want to start doing stuff because I feel like once I start doing it, it clicks. Because right now I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'm doing. But if I do need help, then I'll be able to get some assistance, even if it's on Friday evening or Saturday.
True. Yeah.
Okay.
True. No, I mean, I will tell you that sometimes on the weekend I'm not available, but I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll probably email you and be like, oh, just wanted to put that out there because I can't do it until Friday with the
Okay.
meeting. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, Brandon.
Yes, I'm having problems gathering my data. Like I have access to my third grade data, but getting the data across the grade levels, I've been telling my principal and the MCL like when class first started. So I because I know how they move, and I only have access to my third grade data. And what if I'm trying to wait till tomorrow see if I can get the rest of the scores throughout the school, at least 3 through 5. So how do I go about that?
Who else can you go to besides your principal?
I went to my principal, and then we don't have a CF, we have an MCL, and she gonna email me, but I'm sending emails, and it's like I'm waiting on them. I can't.
Do you have a literacy coach at your school?
No, that is the MCL. It's like a
Okay.
multicultural leader.
Who does testing at your school?
That I went to her. She said that they're waiting. She don't have anything right now.
Okay. Go back. Are you in North Carolina, South Carolina, Brandon?
I'm in North Carolina. That's why I'm listening to y'all. Y'all said the scores are released, but when
Yeah.
I just
Okay. Don't worry about this year's scores.
Well, they're back. They may not be released out to the public yet.
Yeah.
But they're
Right
back.
now, they're not supposed to be released to public. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Go back and use the latest data you can get from your North Carolina report card.
Right.
It is published public knowledge.
Yeah, I go. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. I was speaking on like the map data and the benchmarks and those,
Yeah. Get what you
Okay.
can get and move on.
That's why
Okay.
I mean you can only do so much. Now, who is your CC1?
Rod, is it Rod
Ramsey.
Ramsley? Yes.
If you have to, reach out to Dr. Ramsey. If he needs to speak to him again to help you, reach out to Dr. Ramsey.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Randy?
Yes, sir. So I ran my data PLC today, and we found the most pressing need, which is in my school literacy. Do I keep it in terms of like, I guess strictly just what the data shows? Like, I can mention a little bit of like what we, I guess, talked about from a educator's perspective, but like when I talk about the most pressing need, it's just what the data shows.
Right. And I will tell you this, Randy, don't say my most pressing need is school-wide literacy. That's too broad. You will have to find a focus on what area of literacy are you going to
Right.
concentrate on?
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Mayra?
Hi, sorry about that. My question was about submission, or rather resubmission. So I was just checking my email and I realized that I submitted my peer review in the wrong place. And I resubmitted it in the correct place. Is that gonna count against me?
Not this time. I'll fix it this time. Okay.
Okay.
And I sent you an email about that. So you
I
fixed it.
saw that. Yeah, I'll make sure to check my email
Okay.
earlier. I checked
Okay.
it this morning, but I didn't see. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Tanya?
I was going to address Brandon's question. I had to contact my district chief accountability officer, and that person was able to give me a direct link to this year's data and last year's data with a lot of information. So that might be a place that Brandon can go to.
Thank you, Tanya. And that is right. If there is somebody at the central office level that you can reach out to, then by all means, you have that right to do that as well.
So let me just say this.
Thank you.
When you become a principal, and you will, you need to remember how frustrating it is for some people to get access to you, and try to be accessible to people. Try to be responsive.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Revis. That's good. Quintina?
Okay, my first question is, if I have not heard back from my CC1 person, who or how would I be able to find that person?
I can look on the list. I'll go to look at that right now and see if I can find your name. Did you come in late?
I did.
Okay, you might not be on the list. That
Okay.
might be the problem. I thought you did, Quintina. Let me see. I'll go look while you all are.
While she's looking, then I'm going to go on to Dina's question, Quintina, while she's looking. Okay. Dina?
Dr. Stedman, yes, I do have a question. So the AAPSL one, I received the grade back, so I'm going to resubmit. Where do I resubmit on Thursday evening or
Okay,
before Thursday?
you're back into the same thread.
Okay, so just put it right back where I have submitted it the first time.
And just indicate in there that this is your that has been revised, your revised final.
Okay. And then my other question to you is, I saw the comments to make the revisions on the AAPSL. So my question is, so I have to go back and create a Word document and then make all the revisions there, right? I don't have to make the revisions in the template that you provided. Am I correct in saying that?
No, you make it on your document. You correct your document.
Okay.
My document is just an attack, and you won't. And just a reminder, you won't always get this document from me. I just start out this way, and eventually, I have to cut the apron string, and but I'm pretty intense to start with, and so is Dr. Revis on some things. And we give you a lot, but then we start backing off because we shouldn't have to do this, on and on.
Right. No, I understand. Do you want me to keep the information that you have highlighted on the AAPSL highlighted? No, so take all the highlighting off.
When you send it to me, you send it to me as if it's a perfect completed copy to the best of your ability.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Stedman.
You're welcome. Renee?
Good evening. Quick question. I was kind of in the same boat about hearing from my CC1. During the hurricane, when it came through, I had to postpone because of internet issues, and I haven't heard anything back. I was just kind of curious. I did send an email today, kind of,
who is your
general
person,
reminder.
Renee? Who is your person?
Dr. Ramsey.
Dr.
Ramsey.
Ramsey. Okay, I will.
Yes.
Okay, let me make a note of that.
I'm sure he's busy and I just, just want to give a gentle reminder.
Rod Ramsey.
Quintina, you are not on the list, so I will email Dr. Lamb and copy it to you and get you on the list, okay?
Okay. I do have one other question. When we did our peer review, I know we submitted it to the actual task to the people that we reviewed. Then today we had to go back and do it in the Dropbox as well, right?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And you don't have to actually wait until today. When you submit to your peers, you can go ahead and submit it to us at that time. You don't actually have to wait until today. You can go ahead and get it over with whenever you submit it to your peers.
Okay.
And I sent you an email right before class about probably 6:30 that I had not received yours, and I figured that's may have been what happened.
Well, yeah, what happened was I was like, okay, am I supposed to submit it to? And I had to go back to our schedule and then I submitted. So it was a
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Emmy?
I appreciate you answering my question. I have a question regarding the most pressing need in my PLC. Whenever my principal and I first met regarding me doing my PLC, we discussed leading a reading PLC. However, looking at the data, it appears that the most pressing need will be math. Would you suggest that me meet with my principal to try to revise that? Or how do you suggest I proceed?
That's the whole purpose of your meeting. You're going to be very transparent with your principal and say, now, you can say, I know what you discussed, but now I need to share with you what we have found. And you're going to say, based on everything, this is the most pressing need, and this is why.
Okay. I feel that she will.
And however, if at the end of the day, she still wants you to go in another direction, you will have done your job and you'll have to do whatever she wants you to do.
Okay, I feel that she will be very flexible. I just wanted to clarify with that.
Good.
And I also had one more question just to make sure that within the most pressing need that we find, whether it be reading or math, do we select like a domain subgroup of that to focus on? Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your clarification. I appreciate
You are
it.
welcome, Amy. Jasmine?
Hi, good evening. I have a question about submissions as well. For the peer reviews, do we create a separate I'm gonna go look at it, submission for each one, or is it within the same thread, the one to you guys? Because I got your email, Dr. Revis, and I did submit both of them. So I'm confused as to where or how I need to tweak that.
Okay. Dr. Revis, go ahead and talk, and I'm going to pull something up.
I emailed you back because it gave me the feedback saying that it had been submitted, both of them. So I'm like lost on how to fix that.
Okay. Okay. You see this, Jasmine? AAPSL completed peer review Dropbox?
Yep.
Okay, you click on that. And then you see this, it says AAPSL Task 1, Peer Review 1.
Did that?
Okay, so you do that and you attach whoever your first peer review was and you submit it. You
Okay,
go
wait,
down
wait.
here.
But when you
click on that.
Okay.
And then you submit the same, you submit the same document to whoever your first peer review was. Then you submit that same document here to Dr. Revis. And you submit it for a final grade. And then once you get that one done, you go to AAPSL Peer Review 2 and you submit the second one in that link right there.
Okay. I think I put them both in the same link.
Yeah, and that happens sometimes. You can't put them both in the same link. And what happened, if you put one in, when you put that second one in, it it overshadowed the one that you had submitted originally.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll do that. Dr. Revis, is there any, do you know which one I need I need to send you back now?
Dr. Revis, are you there?
That means she probably saw, she probably missed it. Like you said, if it overshadowed.
Yes, I'm here. Jasmine, I'll have to go up. I'll have to look it up.
No worries.
Jasmine, and what Dr. Revis can do is she has to, she can go in and she can just delete it completely and you can just submit all over again.
Okay, I see the grade. It was, I think I know which, if it overshadowed, that means she probably didn't get my first one. It
Okay.
probably bumped out like you said. So I'll send the first one again. It's just, it'll be just kind of backwards.
That's okay. And it won't matter.
Thank you.
Okay. Renee, did I answer your question? Your hand's still up.
Yes, sir, you did. I just had another question.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
When in task 2, when we're presenting some of our data, it's going to overlap possibly with what we did in our school profile. Is it okay if it overlaps, or do we need to present new
Absolutely.
data?
It doesn't. And you'll find in this program, even when you get to the AAPSL, your next evidence, you'll find that you have to repeat information sometime. So
Okay.
that's okay.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, guys, you think you're ready to battle this? You're really doing a good job. You are.
You really are. I'm just very pleased with even the level of questions that you're asking. They're just questions. A lot of them are process questions. And again, I'm just very pleased with the quality of work that I've seen.
Anyway, okay. Remember, we have a coaching session on this Thursday, and then you have one more coaching session, and you'll be off the hook for several weeks before you have one more. So things will start, leveling off, and you'll be able to actually say, okay, I'm used to something on Thursday night anyway. So when you have to do Zoom team meetings, then I would go ahead and do it on Thursday night because you're used to that already. So anyway, we'll talk about that later on, though. Okay. Well,
and let me just say Thursday night is going to be packed with information about Qualtrics. Just promise me you will not get overwhelmed. Okay. We're not ready to use Qualtrics quite yet. We'll use it in the AAPSL, and there will be support materials for you there. So don't jump off the ledge.
And it's not hard. Once you get into it,
yeah,
it's not hard. So don't just listen to Dr. Lamb and take notes and know that you're going to be okay.
You will be fine with it.
Okay. Okay, Elizabeth, you have another question?
Yes, I apologize for jumping in one more time.
Okay,
Dr.
okay.
Lamb suggested to sign up for Qualtrics. Is that how you pronounce it? Qualtrics account.
Right.
And so I went through the link that was posted, but there was an error connecting to Gardner Web account. Is that something that we need to be concerned about for Thursday's prep session?
No,
Okay.
but remember he said that if you had a problem in one place to go to another place, and Dr. Revis, I cannot remember.
I was able to sign in for a free account after that through like the trial account, but I didn't know if it had to be linked to Gardner Web.
I can't answer that. Elizabeth, just hold your thoughts until, because it's not going to matter. He was just telling you that if you had time to play around and to look at it, he'll clarify all that on Thursday. I am not the expert on Qualtrics. I do understand it, but he is basically the expert on that.
All right, guys. Thank you for a good class tonight.
Absolutely. And no matter how hard we sound sometimes, we're very proud of you.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Hang in there a couple more weeks and you will think, I've got this. I promise.
And I do too.
Have a good evening.
Dr. Stedman.
Yes.
Okay, I got your 50 billion emails. I know we were back and forth. I'm just making sure I'm on the right page. Okay, so it's okay to turn in my peer reviews whenever I see that my peer, whoever, because our group, we created like a little checklist and we choose 2 people. So whenever they submit, I submit.
Yes.
Okay, that was fine.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. And then I got it straight as far as where to submit the second time. I guess I think I was sitting kind of waiting for you. I didn't know. I may not necessarily see a response in my thread from you, other than the one where you told me, once it was after it had been revised, I did get the message about.
That's the only one you're going to see from me until you submit it the last time for me to look at. You're only going to
Okay.
see, you're not going to see when you do send it to your peers. I'm not going to respond to those.
Okay. Okay. I think that's what I was thinking. I think there was like an
Okay.
example or something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was, so I was sitting here thinking I was waiting to see a response from you in the thread,
No,
but
you're
I
not going to see,
shouldn't.
you're not going to see that. No, not for your peers.
Okay, got it. All right, so submit to peers, then I submit where I've completed theirs, and once I get the okay from you, then I put it in the Dropbox, and then
Yes.
I will get comments from you.
Right.
I
Yeah,
have more.
but I'm not going to tell you when it's okay to submit your peer reviews. You're going to automatically submit them to me when you submit them to the peers. I will tell you when it's with your task. That's when I will tell you when you're ready to move on to the next step. Only
Okay.
your task.
Got it. All right.
Okay.
I did receive that message later this afternoon once I got that other stuff
Okay.
cleared up. So
Got
I
you.
just want to make sure.
Okay.
All right. I'm trying not to jump.
Actually, I think you cleared task 1 today.
Yes, I finally did. Yeah, it was
kind of
just
clear.
it
Yeah.
was something with Jeffries that had to be resubmitted
Right.
for his peer review. But
Okay.
once I got that, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if Dr. Revis did the same thing as you in regards to sending a like a highlighted version of our writing and back.
He doesn't. Everybody does it differently.
Okay, I didn't know if I
Yeah.
should be
No,
checking for
no,
that.
no, no. That's my style. That's how I work.
Okay.
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 All right. You have a good night. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.